Speaking of 1917 then.
Oh, good segue, Scott.
Ooh, yes.
You know, I almost thought today I had a little bit of spare time before I realised that I'd forgotten to put the plot into one of my recaps for this film. Oops, that may be important. I thought, you know what, for once I'm actually going to try and prepare segues. And I thought, no, that'd be horribly off-brand. But you've made one that's almost appropriate, so... Oh, edit that out.
Yes. Disgusting.
When a film gets so talked up before its release for the unconventional or groundbreaking way that it was shot, or some other feat of filmmaking, then it's easy to become concerned that it's going to be a gimmick and more style than substance. If you missed it, 1917's big thing was that director Sam Mendes and DP Roger Deakins had planned out a film that would appear as one long, unbroken take. Lies! All lies! And I'm really hoping Scott will just edit in Frau Verbishna from Austin Powers in there so I don't blow out my microphone.
Lies! Oh, lies!
The protagonist loses consciousness partway through to allow a transition to the time just before dawn. Fakery! Infamy! It's clearly 2 long, unbroken takes. I demand a refund. The other danger is that people get hung up on the technical aspects and lose sight of how it serves the story. One of the most notable examples of this being the long Steadicam shot in Goodfellas as Henry enters the club with Karen. That was an impressive feat logistically and in terms of performance, but it was how that scene brought Karen and the viewer into Henry's world that mattered. While as a film not as good as Goodfellas, 1917's trick is, I'm pleased to say, just as much in service to the film as that Steadicam shot,
Yeah.
though in its case more to tone than story, creating a sense of tension, urgency and fluidity that few films can maintain. The story itself is fairly simple. It's 1917. Weird, right? And British communication lines have been cut during the German retreat to the Hindenburg Line. An assault in the German positions is planned by the Devonshire Regiment, but they're operating on out-of-date information. Aerial photography shows that, at the risk of sounding like a space fish, it's a trap. Colin Firth's General Aaron Moore dispatches Lance Corporal Tom Blake, Dean Charles Chapman, whose brother is a lieutenant in the Devonshires, with an urgent message for the commander to halt the attack or risk the deaths of all 1,600 of his men. It's a desperate run across no man's land and through occupied towns, but speed is key, so he's sent with only a single companion, George Mackay's Will Schofield. One of our heroes dies not long into the journey. The draining of colour from the stricken soldier's skin is one of the most memorable war movie moments I've ever seen, in a film with plenty of them, and the survivor must complete the seemingly hopeless journey alone. The photography, as you might well expect, is incredible, and the choices made help with the story. An early scene has one of the goriest and grisliest settings I've ever seen, but the set dressing and the colour temperature prevent it being immediately obvious. It's only after we've been there for a few minutes and the camera moves closer that we can begin to make out recognisable shapes and comprehend just what we're seeing. And then Schofield's hand is put somewhere that is likely to precipitate many a visceral reaction. From there, the film moves through verdant fields and bleached, lifeless quarries, to a dingy bunker and a spitefully wrecked cherry orchard, the bright blossom of which is in stark juxtaposition to the death and destruction surrounding it, with the colours and lighting varying with and evoking both location and mood. In the village of Écus-Saint-Maine, where the film commits its great lie, "Out lies!"
Lies! Oh, lies!
Deakins paints a striking scene lit only by flares and fire as Schofield runs towards dawn. There is not a moment of this film not in some way visually interesting. Based on stories told to him by his grandfather, Alfred Mendes, Sam Mendes' 1917 manages to solve that problem of World War I films, which is that it was in many ways a very static war, with entrenched soldiers and artillery barrages, and only the occasional utterly wasteful and suicidal run against other entrenched soldiers with machine guns. In that regard it is certainly very artificial, but it manages to give a strong flavour of much of the landscape of the war, and much of its horror too. What I would like to do soon is to watch this again and try to turn off the analytical part of my brain, or at least that part that went in thinking, I am going to jolly well spot all of your transitions, Deakins and Sam Mendes. And spot them I did, I think, or most of them at least. And actually, it just added to my appreciation of the film's craft. There's no great trickery, they're just very skillfully done. A fade into darkness as a bunker is entered, the crossing of a wall around an orchard. And because they are so masterfully masked, then most people wouldn't even think about them, let alone see them. And while I appreciate the craft, I do regret that I may have misdirected my attention somewhat. That said, 1917 is much more about tone and action than plot, so I doubt I did myself too much of a disservice. And I still thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes, me too. Like yourself, I was a little bit worried that it could come across as stunt filmmaking, but I was glad to see that for the most part I didn't actually go looking for, well, even attempt to look for most of these transitions, apart from the very obvious ones, like you probably didn't throw the camera into the river, so that's probably not a legit transition there. But yeah, I did find myself at the start of it feeling a little unsettled for a different reason though, which is that strangely it evoked the nature of like a Call of Duty game. It felt like I was watching a very long cutscene in a video game. I kept expecting it to come up with a prompt telling me to press X to breach or something like that. But because of the way it's shot with the same kind of over-the-shoulder things, and it follows in exactly the same way that you would see in the kind of cutscenes of video games. So props to video games for learning so well. But just as it's effective in immersing you in a video game, that technique works very well in this film as well, to immerse you in the travels or protagonists, and it works really well. As you say, the story's not much. It's almost it's all about the journey rather than the destination. It's almost a chase movie without being chased. You know what I mean? I can't quite put what the right word would be. Yeah. But it's got that sort of a feel to it. Yeah. But it works really well. There's lots of very effective little vignettes of showing how gross this war is. What I liked about it actually is that there's a kind of continual running thread through it that even if they do get to this the general in time, there's a possibility that maybe he's going to ignore these orders, maybe he's going to just throw his folks into the grinder because that's what you're doing in war. And it kind of manages to subvert that and then unsubvert it again, because basically, like, don't suppose it's really spoilers, but yeah, the guy eventually listens to reason, doesn't order the attack for the most part, but it's made pretty clear that, well, you've saved these guys' life for a week, 2 weeks, something like that, until the next opportunity we have to try and get another 6 inches of land by throwing a couple of 100,000 people into a meat grinder. So it's not exactly leaving you on a happy ending, even after you get the happy ending, and you get this almost ridiculous story of triumph over incredible odds. And as well, in the grander context of the war, it's not actually going to make a lot of difference. Like, oh, that's almost disheartening as you come out of the cinema. But it's very much fitting for the First World War, very much on brand. It's the whole lions led by donkeys thing as well, and the fact that the whole war was basically predicated on outdated tactics, cavalry tactics and stuff. War with automatic weapons and trenches. It did not match the actual realities of it. It's just a very, very effective film. Very powerful. It might not be a film I actually go back and watch maybe at all. It's very effective and I liked it, but it's not a particularly easy watch. It stirs up a lot of things that I'm perhaps not going to want to see on a casual level all that often. But yeah, it is a very terrific piece of filmmaking. It deserves all the plaudits that it gets. Cinematography wise, you've mentioned all the major bits that I thought of. There was one point, I think it's just when he's running through the ruins of the city at night and it starts to be lit up by flares, and I kind of went, oh, come on, you're just showing off at this point. That's too good. Just stop it. I've noticed a few of these Roger Deakins, I haven't watched so many in close proximity now, that he does quite like his night shots lit with fire or little light. Actually, as much as I like the 1970, I think I may actually just prefer the end of Skyfall. Right, yeah. With Kincaid and M going out across the moor with the burning building lighting them and accelerating them stuff. But it's a close run thing. That scene in 1970 is incredible. It's like there's fires and there's the flares and he's running. It's like, you're right, Scott. He's showing off. It's like, yes, we know you're brilliant.
And the technical achievement in planning and executing all this, both from Deakins and Mendes, is quite remarkable. Yes, it is a remarkable piece of logistics, almost as much as it is of filmmaking. But yes, it's certainly paid off. To great effect. And it's spirited performances from the leads, and also a lot of pretty good supporting roles from various people popping up as they meet on their way, all of which kind of lend a little bit of a character to it as well. So yes, all very good stuff.
Yeah, the logistics is the thing too. Like, while that scene in Goodfellas is particularly impressive because of what I mentioned, the performance, if that goes wrong, if somebody misses their mark or something goes wrong, you've got to shoot that entire thing again.
Yeah.
In 1990, particularly expensive when it's on film.
Yeah.
But here, with like so many long takes, you like multiply that by 30 or something. And, if anybody gets anything wrong in a take, they have to do the entire thing again. And it's impressive. And again, this is not really the point. The point is like, is the final result worthwhile, which it clearly is. But I'm just impressed by that kind of imagination, the ability to plan it and stuff. And then because there's like digital extensions, but it's all real sets.
Yeah.
And some like the work that must have got into a lot of that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then to actually be able to produce these shots through it, and the clever things they had to work out with cameras and the mounting of them and things. It's incredible stuff. Yeah, and just to touch on another point you made, so that I really did like that little nod of Mark Strong's character with that warning about the commander. I like that. That's it's good because it's unfortunately I can't remember the actual phrase, but basically there's kind of like a prejudice to action over inaction.
Yeah.
So there's like he's saying make sure there's just make sure there's witnesses and stuff, because otherwise might just be compelled to do that anyway, like to seem to be doing something. A couple of like fairly respected, fairly big name actors in there too, that in there for moments really, which is nice to see, like people that kind of really appreciate the quality of the person they're working with, I think, and will happily turn up for the small, possibly even relatively thankless role. If there's one minor issue I had, is I wasn't 100% sold on George Mackay's performance, because I thought his delivery seemed a little stilted. Like he was speaking very carefully and like enunciating very clearly, that didn't strike me as quite right for a private in the army in World War One. That might just maybe a choice thing. It didn't take me out of it, I was aware of it.
Like he was talking a bit more like an officer rather than a enlisted.
But like quite kind of, and I've seen him in other things, and he doesn't speak like that, so it's not his normal method of speaking, I don't think. And I think it was a choice, and it's very, very clear diction. That there may well be privates who spoke that, it kind of stood at odds with his co-star.
It's very different how armies are normally portrayed for this kind of thing, isn't it? Normally expect a more broad working class accents at that level of,
and particularly at that time as well. So we are at the level of nitpicking. I just wanted to mention it because it stuck out a little to me. I mean, there's not a massive amount of dialogue in the film, so it's fairly inconsequential. I just thought that was all, because it seemed like it was a choice. And I was just a bit surprised by that. It didn't seem to fit in, but very minor. And he's generally pretty watchful for the rest of it, so it's all good.